All right, here we are. You guys, welcome to the Heterodox Vigor channel. This is Benjamin, your host, and with me today have one of my longtime social media buddies and previous podcast co-conspirators, Meister Chit Chat. So today, he's taken time out of his day to go ahead and provide a conversation partner with me about economic stuff that frankly, I've been hearing a lot of it, and I wanted to hear what Aaron had heard about. Aaron, if you want to go ahead and just give your basic version of who you noticed specifically was just wanting to look in a really specific way pretty consistently. Like the people that saw this way, they were probably this. What were you telling me about that?
So my neck of the woods is pretty conservative, pretty Trumpian. The majority that I have talked to take the word of Trump for the purpose of the tariffs. They're behind it. They're okay. Many of them had prepared by already more or less sourcing their needs and desires through a local network. So they've pretty much been sheltered, prepared, and battered down. I've seen a really odd coming together in parallel between two groups that hated each other for the entirety of my libertarian career, which would be blue dog rank and file Democrats and free market purist libertarians. I remember being told many times that I was a monster and evil for wanting to capitalize healthcare and other things and, tear down socialist norms by these same Democrats who are now toting up to the libertarian line that free markets and tariffs and other things don't work. And that's been the most humorous thing. Now I am a capitalist. I am not a free market purist, especially when the monopolies that have occurred.
Here's the magic question, sir. Magic question. Are the citizens for the economy, or is the economy for the citizens?
That is the magic question. That is absolutely the magic question. And is the government for governing people or for the people, or is it a government for people? And that seems to be the questions no one can answer adequately to anyone's, base desire. I like to think we're people versus products, but you look around and it doesn't quite seem to be my way of thinking is how things are run. So, but that's the gist of my my observations of the current thing. I just recently got back into social media probably a month ago. I had to take a break. I could not. I just couldn't anymore.
It's jungle out there.
It's a jungle, and there's a lot of just more stupid people getting online with opinions and empowered to spout them off. But I just couldn't take it. I had to reground myself with people just in my local area and be like, okay, yeah, no, these people, y'all are smart, y'all get it. I can sit and talk to you and not be accused of this, that, and other race. Is this ist or ism or obia?
Right.
And then people, what is odd coming back, the blue anon crowd really is. I mean, horseshoe theory has been so much present the last, I guess, 8 years from when Trump caused his whole kerfuffle, and you have the whole Biden thing with his election, and then blue anon doing Trump's election. And it's just like the chessboard of the American zeitgeist keeps getting shuffled around by whoever's still watching the media, which has been encouraging as I've come back to see more people from both sides of the aisle attacking the media with vigor.
Well, right. And I'm sure it's been months since, CNN or MSNBC aired something that was just like in a random afternoon or random like early morning hour that got even a fraction of the views of something like, Hassan Piker and Ethan Klein like debating. That's the thing. Like you have a couple of fringe characters, both of whom are on, left of center. One was more pro-Israel, one was more anti-Israel. And trust me, when I say if you're on either of those teams, these aren't your guys. There's better people that are pro-Israel. There's better people that are pro-Palestine, just to clear that up. But the point is, these couple of fringe guys get more views on their arguments, which, to be fair, they're entertaining. And that's the problem is, everybody kind of laughed when Jon Stewart took his cut, and then there goes Stephen Colbert took his cut. And then it killed me when Stephen Colbert tried to go straight, like straight man. And I'm like, no, you did the other side really effectively. You did. And now that you're trying to like convince people, oh, don't believe, your own lying eyes, believe what I tell you. Like that's, yeah, no, your entertainment was in how well you called out the nastiness of the other side. And unfortunately, Jon Stewart, same thing. Like he can say all he wants against the left. I've never seen him be funny about it. Like he was funny against the right. He wasn't funny against the left. And it just, it makes me wonder whether these people really stop to think. Same thing, man, like Bill Maher. I like that guy. I do. But what? He had the urge to say something and he didn't really stop to think whether it was true. And he said, I don't remember word for word, but it basically made it sound like there was one kind of person in India, which is not an uncommon mistake to make. But it was one of those really, really like, guy, are you trying to be funny? Please tell me. No, you're not. The way you're saying it, we know you mean what you're saying, and it's ignorant, and that's the thing is I try to admit up front of like, oh, I'm not familiar with that. If I'm not familiar with it, if I am, I'd be like, I don't know, I heard this. Like we can agree to disagree, right? So, and again, if I don't know, I'm gonna represent that I know. So that gets us to these people talking about these tariffs, expenses. Like you were mentioning that in many cases the expenses were going not up yet. You were ready for them to go up. You're watching for them to go up. You're kind of looking over your shoulder for the news. And as you summarize, like, well, we knew that they were threatening tariffs unless we could work a deal. People might be gambling that we're going to work a deal really fast. But still, it makes sense to kind of shift to America first, like suppliers, if you have that option. And if you don't, you're going to be, as an entrepreneur, you're going to say, hey, wait a second. I now know a product that people will want to buy from the USA. So what does it take for me to make this product in the USA? That was the real intention behind the tariffs, is to make people who were on the fence about manufacturing in the United States make the plunge to say whatever it was before. With this trade war going on, regardless of which way it swings, one of two things is true. If I make too much in the USA, I can slough it off on one of these countries that is now open due to free trade deals. Or if we end up behind some sort of tariff war for a long time, I'm going to be one of the first providers in town providing, name recognition for being one of the first USA players to do this industry here, to be this supplier of this thing that people used to get from China. So that is, and Walmart is years ahead of the game for that, by the way, because they knew, when Obama was in office, people like me were like, oh, that's really neat that this plastic garbage can that the factory took 7 cents to make, that they're selling for 97 cents here on the shelf, was made in America. And that's really special to me. And I feel really good about paying a dirt cheap price for a product that was made in America that sells, right? And it's not, and again, it's a 7 cent product. Anyone who studied into that understands that, like, every bit of that 90 cents is going to people providing some sort of value along the chain up to the big slush fund that is Walmart corporate ownership and their shareholders feeling of owning within the Walmart Corporation, right? Like that's what it boils down to. So again, what does it come down to on the tariffs? People were definitely trying to plan ahead for that. So here's the thing: if you know that you know with the pandemic a few years ago, one of the big things that people called out was that actually China had stopped their expedited shipment speeds of medical, stuff to the rest of the world a number of months before anything was spoken about anything, right? So by the time that people were looking to stockpile, China had already cut off the supply. In this case, China did not do that. In fact, what you actually see when you start looking at GDP numbers is the US-based sellers basically bought twice as much as they would have from China for quarter 1 of this year. And what that's going to, and despite that, by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean a positive direction for employment in China during that period of time for various reasons. I'll just leave that there. I'm not making solid claims. I'm just saying that there's a lot of mixed data on that and that the CCP is not public about that aspect of things, right? But the people that run their own numbers have opinions, and it's rational to assume that if people were worried about that sort of thing, they might have been a little bit nervous. But here's the worst part is the people that didn't do that and were not nervous about things, because a whole bunch of people, I feel probably some of the people that I overall feel worse for is Chinese small business owners that have had absolutely no option on how to deal with this, because due to the decisions of their own government. Because remember, Trump didn't actually, Trump needed to get the drop on the CCP if they weren't going to play ball. He gave them opportunities to play ball. They waited until China made it clear that, and just to be clear, the best information, according to non-official sources, when China had said specifically that Xi did not talk to Trump about tariffs or trade, that the best interpretation based on the outside evidence is that instead Xi said basically, look, we can give you we can do these other deals for you and stuff, but where we need to start, we need you to publicly say that that Taiwan unification with mainland China is your official policy. And what that does is that it will undermine the Taiwanese confidence and loyalty that we would actually defend them in the case that China invaded them. Because remember, the position on the left of the world, like talk to any Marxist and they're like, oh yeah, man, China reunification and stuff, smash the fascists, right? So they're definitely useful idiots on that one, the Baizhou. I don't care if I pronounce it wrong because it's a pejorative.
That's the only way I ever heard it pronounced.
Right. So no, but the point being though that no. So let's talk about actually the tariffs. What kind of effect? So one of the ways that it was wrecking Chinese small businesses wasn't just on their exports, also on their imports. And you'll notice one of the first things that Xi dropped a tariff on was on ethene, which is one of the precursor chemicals for the types of plastic that large portions of their manufacturing were using. And the thing is, that stuff, they got it from the US. Their capacity to make that stuff isn't high. There's technical challenges about it that make it high value added, not just anyone can do this job, that sort of a thing, right? And if you don't have superb technology and the people to run it, you probably are better off letting someone else probably not blow themselves up, right? I mean, because these are hydrochemicals, right? So anyways, point being, so you had these businesses that all of a sudden their primary input for their production was going to over double on import costs because of the tariffs that Xi put in place, right? That wasn't US tariffs. That was the tariffs that Xi put in place that Xi had to remove really quickly because of that. And I'm not downing that at all. If anything, I would point out that, President Trump did similarly. There were a couple of things that had somehow ended up on the tariff list that US business people are like, listen, that probably isn't strategic. That's going to hurt us as much as it's going to hurt them, if not more. How about we let that one go and use that one to play good cop, huh? Trump's like, fair is fair, right? Fair is fair. Hey, my boys pointed out this one's not serving us. We're going to go ahead and drop it because it's not serving us.
Right. I mean, he's all about the deal.
It's a move of strength. And it's funny because people are like, oh, look, Trump surrendered. And we're like, that's cool. And like another 18 Chinese banks fail. And we're like, Ed G's like, so can we talk now? And we're like, I think so. And he's like, well, maybe you should give me something I want first. We're just like talking to us. Yeah. So that's the phase that we're at, by the way, in the trade war, is that we're more or less committed to talking to the Chinese very soon about a new permanent reset in relations between us and China, Nixon style. We'll see where that goes. Because right now, of course, my opinion is that it's not just that I consider, it's not like the Chinese Communist Party is like, it's not like the mullahs in Iran, where they're essentially of one mind to the death about something. Rather, they're much more like in Russia, where they are soulless, hierarchy climbing, like knife in the back type people. And that realistically you don't get there by being a good person. And so the closest thing to a good person that you're going to get are people that are like essentially rational psychopaths, right? That are like, oh, Chinese prosperity of like a lot of Chinese people could be really cool and stuff. And that could have my name on it. And I could stay rich instead of letting Xi run this into a ditch. So there's been a lot. There's not one Chinese Communist Party in the sense that, there's one power structure to fight over. There are at least 3 factions within it, and Xi's is only one of the 3.
Yeah, we're the tit for tat in terms of our trade between them. It's very circular to the point of one of us has got the other by the balls, the other one's got the other by the throat, and the last 2 have each by the hair at the same time.
Yeah,
but it's going as you laid it out. I mean, that gives Trump and his admin the ability pick and choose. Go for a kidney punch over a gut punch. Roll with a different punch.
Right. And that's the thing, is that we planned to fight. So like we have armor where we wanted armor, and where we couldn't find armor, then we are planning on them striking there, and we have a plan for when they try to strike there. I mean, that's remember the theme of the year this year is for people that don't want to deal with all of the funky labels for it. They don't want the scary associations, whatever. No, let me narrow it down to math. Possibility A plus possibility B is equal or greater than 1. Okay, that's the name of their game, is that to make sure that if A doesn't happen, B does. And it's not just their game, it's an effective way to do things in the universe. Like, we can talk about a whole bunch of different inventions that we could agree are very useful, and I'll show you how they can be explained by that idea of possibility A plus possibility B is greater than or equal to 1.
Yeah. What I have found humorous about this whole situation, I mentioned earlier, Blue Dog system supporting, jargon spouting Democrats. They've been pro-regulation, pro-protections, pro this, pro that. And right now they're trying to support the country that bucks every safety measure and regulation we try and put in for consumer protections. And the best way to have those kind of consumer protections is to bring that kind of industry back home.
Yep.
It's the clown world is the main, that right there is the main reason I jumped off, or that concept is why I had to jump off social media. People calling me racist while demanding that someone had to pick their cotton, all the fruits and do the other stuff. We've got to have brown people that aren't good enough to pay as much to take care of our agriculture.
Exactly it. That's literally what their problem was they're like, listen, if we try to get people like me to do it, I will demand more money. And when you start listening to them about why they would demand more money, you realize, like you said, it's circular arguments, because at the end of the day, what they're saying is that their expectation is that the reason why they want someone not like them to be expected by society to do it is so that they can get the double dip benefit of A, not having to do it for themselves, which, if in case anyone's uncreative out there, you can grow just about any kind of fruit that you're thinking of. It might not be very practical in terms of what your setup is that you're going to have to set up to do it. But I mean, you really can. It might not be legal in certain jurisdictions, but it's a human ability to grow a fruit. Okay.
Depending on the crop. Yeah.
Yeah. But my point is that, like, this isn't like, only that kind of human can do it. Right? Like, you can do it too. They can do it too. All of us can do it a lot easier and better with better technology and better tools, better knowledge about how it all works. But at the end of the day, what you want people that are essentially good for nothing else around, so that they will accept whatever standard of living you can get them to accept that's better from where they came from, and pay them based on that. And it's for those same people to then pass themselves off as anything other than like maximally extractive of people who aren't like them is really kind of confusing to people like me.
Yeah, Arkansas has been like behind the times on a lot of this stuff. We just learned the word xenophobia in the Democratic circles of my state, but it all has extrapolated out from the whole argument of, no, like, we want to make these bad companies pay more locally. You might pay more for the product, but you'd be getting what you finally wanted, at the cost of not putting these people to a work that you find beneath you. And it's patently absurd. And you present that to them, deconstruct it, base axioms, and put it back in front of them. You just watch gears freeze and smoke come out of their ears, because they've just spent their whole lives railing against the system, and then all of a sudden they realize they're being programmed by it.
Well, and in their defense, what the system does to both sides is that it takes the part of the system that's nominally about solving a problem, it uses to make that problem worse, and then it sells us with, hey, if we weren't here making the problem worse, you'd still have a problem. And you're like, what? Like, wait a second. The problem didn't go away. The problem actually got worse. But without you, it would have been what? It would have been even more worse. Like at some point, did we try it the other way? Have we tried have we looked at the incentive structure on why we might be getting more crime instead of less under certain conditions? And maybe we should try to invert those conditions to get less crime instead of more under similar conditions that are adjusted based on observation. And the thing is, when you start looking at stuff, there are jurisdictions of law enforcement that have high IQ cutoffs. Like if you test it over for certain positions, you cannot get in if you're over certain IQ. And the reason why, of course, is because those people question orders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the DOJ came back and said, no, that's legal. You can discriminate along the needs of necessity for order following.
Absolutely. And that's the problem, though, is that, again, so what they do is they take something that's necessary, they replace it with the thing that makes it worse instead of the thing that addresses it, right? Because that's the thing is that, for instance, let's take something really stupid and shallow. When it was on record that something like 30% of the nation was using THC when it was just blatantly illegal to do so, at some point or another, it doesn't take it doesn't take a Stephen Miller to come up to the idea to say, hey guys, couple of legal issues that I have with what's going on here, and maybe some recommendations on how to improve things. It didn't take a legal genius. It took anybody with a basic working of the Constitution saying, hey guys, couple of problems here. And the biggest one from people like me is, I want law enforcement to be people that you trust. I want law enforcement to have a job that doesn't include screwing you over, right? They're supposed to be there to protect and serve. So we need to make sure that the incentives for law enforcement are set up to protect and serve, not to screw people over, right? And that's not just the direct incentives, that's indirect incentives. You're like, oh no, we pay extra for when they bust the bad guys with drugs. And it's like, okay, what robust safeguards do you have in place towards them pinning drugs on the bad guys? I'll let my HR person get back to you on that. Right. So I'm sorry, we don't discuss internal loss prevention, policy stuff, because we don't want the bad guys to know how we are catching them. Yes. So right. you get, and that's the thing is, again, like, I'm not the only slick talker in the world, and these police jurisdictions have whatever passes for a slick talker in their neighborhood. Some neighborhood, it might look more like Jasmine Crockett, right? I'm not sure if you've seen her in the media recently, but yeah. And you know what I mean, which is that it wouldn't strike you that this person went to law school, right?
She can code switch like anybody I've ever seen.
Right. And the thing is, a lot of us can, and one of the reasons why we make sure to do it humorously, and I mean, that's the thing too, which is that, like, man, if Hillary would have stuck to good practices about code switching, she actually could have used that pretty effectively. Tim Walz actually, or is it Tim Walz? Yeah, Tim Walz, the vice president candidate for Kamala there, he bragged about how he was selected for his code switching skills. Tampon Tim.
Yeah. Really? I never saw that.
Oh yeah. Nope. I saw that one on X. That he's like, oh yeah, I was selected by the Harris campaign for my excellent code switching skills.
Well, that would make it a lot of sense as to why his family doesn't like him, because they consider him two-faced.
No kidding. No, well, that's the thing, is that to get by in the Democrat Party, that's what they're having to do. And frankly, back in the old Republican Uniparty too, one of the most disappointing people ever to traipse through Congress for me was Paul Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you remember he could start talking about Ayn Rand's ideas and stuff. And,
Mhm.
he stayed in shape. He seemed to be in touch with some level of his like faith tradition. I don't remember details, but he passed off all the things that Machiavelli would say are a good idea to pass off, and then what did it come out in the end? He was loyal opposition. He absolutely, his job was to make people question the Republicans' ability to do anything but obstruct what the Democrats wanted to do. And I think he did a great job of that. Like when you start looking at how things actually went. But what they underestimated, of course, was that people that became disillusioned with Paul Ryan did not start voting en masse for Hillary Clinton, right? They were out there voting for whoever was primarying Paul Ryan. Like real, I mean, maybe not that cycle. I don't remember which cycle he dropped out. When he did, of course, he took a very lucrative job with a big corporation that surprised no one. I don't remember which one, don't care. Like, we care that things that you did in Congress, we really don't care how you got paid off. Like, there's so many dirty people, and there's so many people that generally are just like doing their job, but like, I mean, I'm a congressperson and like it wasn't against the rules when I did it, so yeah.
I just looked up where he went. He's on the board of Fox.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, because you understand what that means too. Remember when Fox just got worse and worse over the years, not that they were ever super great, but for a while there, they were doing pretty okay. And then they just had fewer and fewer hosts that were really quality. And a lot of them have gone independent, the quality ones, right? And just at some point or another, I just started hearing about like old people dying and retiring, and the new people taking over on the end of like the Murdochs and all that. And it's just they're just kind of globalists. So it's I always think Fox has been some level of controlled opposition, because again, I've been really public about this. To me, the main message that I got from 1984 was that any government worth its salt was going to run its own opposition groups, right? And that way
you're controlling all the pieces on the chessboard.
Well, yeah, that way you can actually get people either on the right path to understand why they want to live like everybody else in society, or you can kind of contain them to where they're not infecting other people with their ideas in the same way. But the thing is, remember that there's more layers to that, because if you go to like Brave New World, where they just let the savage wander around. Why? Because it wasn't just that he was sufficiently different that they weren't going to just trust and believe him. It was that he was so different that they just assumed that if they could understand him perfectly, what was true from his point of view might not be true from their point of view. And they just really weren't interested in the point of view of someone like that. He really wasn't a very happy guy at all. Like, they could offer him things that would make them happy, and he didn't want them. Like, what a weirdo. And at some point or another, when someone just shares so few values with you, what you can actually do is, if you can get that person to start spouting ideas, you can actually poison people against those ideas by association with the kind of people that they don't feel akin to, right? They don't feel that sense of brotherhood with, right? And as you've, I'm sure, many times experienced a deep sense of brotherhood with humans of every color of skin on this planet. However, within every color of skin on this planet, there are certain lineages that most people have trouble getting along with, because they have trouble getting along with most people. And They
Mhm.
oftentimes have really different standards for what's pro-social based on whether you're in group or out group, compared to here in the Western countries. A lot of the time we have a lot closer standards. Like the gap between how we would treat an illegal immigrant Canadian who had broke no other law except wandering across the border, let's say 15 miles going the wrong direction on a hike. What are we going to do? We're going to say, be more careful next time. We're going to make sure you're not a terrorist. Then we're sending you back to Canada, right? And now think about the Hasilia missionaries that tried to go witness to the people on the island that doesn't like people, and surprising no one, they shot
You're
up
talking
the
about
missionary canoe full of arrows because that's what they do to things that come near their island, right? Like
right.
you don't have to be a bigot to be like, well, why would you suggest that in the past, if they've always been violent to outsiders, that in the future they might keep doing that? Right? At some point, it's just these people want you to discard common sense. And what people need to realize is when you discard common sense, it's not just that you make errors, it's that you waste resources. Like, people learned a lot of these things the hard way so that you could learn them the easy way if you think about it and you think about the stories that they told you. Like, you remember, that's one of the big themes of this channel is being able to learn from myths and narratives, to be able to hear something without regard to whether it's true, and to be able to think about how it relates to what you think you do know about the world, and how that might be different, how it might be the same, how maybe things could rhyme, what you might expect to see in the real world based on an idea that's in your fiction, whatever it is. You can use the world building of someone else, even if they're just building a propaganda narrative about our own world, right? You can use that world building narrative and compare and contrast it with the narrative that you have in your head, and you can glean the shadows that they cast over each other. You can see the overlaps. You can see the things that neither of them wants to touch. And that level of thinking about things is so rich in being able to understand consequences moving forward into the future. And I don't expect most people to do a lot of that because it's a hobby, right?
Well, it's become a hobby in our day and age because, one, the naivety is the source of a lack of a lot of common sense. Because if you weren't a literary hobbyist, you didn't read Aesop's fables, you didn't read Grimm's fairy tales, or you did not come across them in the lens of, this is teaching a lesson, this is showing you, be wary of strangers, have tight family, stable family ties, work for a future, prepare for yourself. I mean, even little books like The Little Red Hen was a missive to dissuade people from having leech communes. If you're going to live together, you've got to work together to reap the benefits together.
Right.
And all of this new generation was raised on the shit Sesame Street, Blue's Clues, I Love You, You Love Me, A Happy Family, Barney, that teaches nothing but the most vapid, basic traits of a civilized society, which is just be kind, be kind. And if you're kind without a hardness and a falling out to rebuild upon, you will be terminally naive. And if you've been primed with these shallow stories, and then you go to the shallow Nickelodeon, you go to the shallow Disney, and then you go to the shallow shit sitcom and the late night TV show, your whole perspective and psyche is primed for bread and circuses, for the laugh track. And when you read or are given something with a deep lesson, you're still caught up at the baseline of, it's a black and white, good and evil. Yay.
The good
And
guys
we-
won again. Who wrote the story?
Yeah.
Anyways.
I mean, just oh shoot. I just read it today. It was kind of like the flip you mentioned on Lord of the Rings before we started talking, but it was so the Jedi, not the Jedi, yeah, back in the prequels, the
Yeah.
Jedi
I'm very
Council,
familiar.
Guild, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
They were the most horrendous, ethically devoid leadership that could have been possible in that universe.
Oh yeah, the
Because
Jedi Council.
Well, they created an entire army of human beings with souls, deleted their free choice, made them cannon fodder to go fight a war. And they're supposed to be the good guys.
Oh, there's a lot of other things that they did that points out. So what it is that it's to the point of where the fandom has contributed plenty to the culture. And one of the fandom things that's bigger in the culture than it is in like the books, for instance, is the idea of the gray Jedi. And what do you suppose?
yeah.
It's about balance and finding the balance in the Force. And what you essentially find out, though, like, for one thing, one of my favorite things is the whole thing about there always only being 2 Sith Lords. Now, why would you want that? To remind you of what we said about the joke about, but what if the One Ring didn't really get burned up by the fires of Mount Doom? What if actually Sauron was the only person who could fish it out when it fell in there, right? So in that spirit, what it is actually is that what if the Sith were actually a psyop by the Jedi, and that they literally had a position of the guy who trains the Sith apprentices to keep doing the Pearl Harbors, right? To their excuses, so that, and that's why they're like, there are always only 2, the master and the apprentice. It's only 2. Gotcha, boss. Really, no one ever questioned that, ever. No one ever questioned, like, why is it that one always gets away to train a new one? Why is it that, like, they don't...
the fact they're always in close proximity to the Council of Palpatine.
Oh,
Dooku.
And that's the thing, is that they have all these supporting cast, some of whom you find out, like Count Dooku, had Force powers. General Grievous had Force powers. Wait a second. What is this only 2 Sith? So actually what you find out is that this lie is continued to be repeated up until even Yoda was repeating it to Luke when he was going off to fight Palpatine.
Vader in Cloud City.
And well, I mean, I'm just saying, though, in terms of the way that it played out, you know, he's fighting the 2 of Vader and Palpatine, right? Because, they're always only 2. Now, what was the reason for that? Well, it was supposed to be, again, like it was a containment thing. And you're like, wait a second, how did it do? Well, how it did was they counted on the already existing desires of the Sith Lord to not have someone who could challenge them. They only wanted someone who the only training that they had received was from them. And the only way to have that sort of security over their position was to only take on one apprentice at a time, and to let there be no competing masters, right? And so the Jedi, very conveniently, Baptists and bootleggers, right? Any competition to the Sith got picked up by the Jedi. And like the moment they reared their head, you had how many Jedi headed your way? Right? Not just that, but remember that the Jedi were going around preemptively testing people to try to turn them to the light side before they could turn to the dark side. But remember, they also tested you for light side, dark side. What do you suppose happened? They want to, I mean, I'm not going to even make arguments about the younglings scene, because that could be its own 3-hour episode that we're not doing. But my point is just that, like, what do you think happened to the younglings that tested high for midichlorians but bad on personality? Yeah, don't
Ended
ask.
up on some backwater.
But yeah.
So with our current situation,
Ugh.
is China and Russia our Sith Lords
Right.
that
And
America
that's the
is
thing is that
propped up and worked with?
the WEF the whole time has just, it's been circuses, right? You're like, what are they doing? They're part of the distraction. And the thing is, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to them. You should listen to every word they say, but then you have to interpret it through the lens that they are the circus. And that if that's what they're telling you in public, what aren't they telling you in public? And the thing is also, people that are worried about that have not read Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari, I don't know what you're doing, man. If you want to understand the threats to humanity's future from the perspective of a guy that the World Economic Forum gave like a medal and and room on the stage at the World Economic Forum for, and you know what he used that time to say was, guys, you guys need to get it under control, because listen, before too long AI is going to take over, and unless you find a way to make sure that it's doing it your way, it might not do it your way. Have a great evening. And I mean, that's the thing, he left it with the tone of he's trying to warn people. But when you think about it too hard and you look at his actual everything, it's pretty clear that he's a defeatist. He sold his soul a long time ago, and he is just enjoying the decline.
Is Yuval, was he the psychologist guy that was working with WEF?
Well, he's not he's a historian, is what he is.
Okay. I was trying to, because there was a guy that was with the WEF that
so
quoted, had the quote about people are programmable or what have you.
Yes.
Okay,
and they are. That's the thing. From his perspective, here's the problem. People don't want to hear that that people are programmable any more than they want to hear that like goldfish are edible, because they don't want to have to think about people, including themselves, having to eat goldfish instead of whatever they should be eating instead, right? But they are edible, kind of. I mean, I don't recommend it, but yeah, no, that's where we're at, is when people hear people are programmable and they're just like, says what? Right? Like they're not, it's like maybe they are, but who said we were going to let you try? Right? And that's the rational response that I've seen from the people that don't feel obligated to put thought into things. And here's the thing that warms my heart, because on so many issues, the failure mode is that people, because they don't understand what the problem is, they just go with it. Right? So for once we have something that actually their instincts are warning them against, that they're like, hey guys, maybe find out what the neural lace version 1 does to the chimpanzee before you let them put it in your skull. Right? That's common sense. That it's shameful that I have to say that out loud, but we do, because there's going to be that middle strata of people that's really excited about doing a cool high-tech thing that don't have the wisdom to say, yeah, but what if it's technology, and what if it does technology stuff like not working right all the time while it's connected to your brain and sending electrical signals into your brain, assuming that it can't get corrupted or hacked or a virus, which if those things cannot happen, it's because specific safeguards have been put in, they've been tested, and there's always a possibility that someone finds a new trick that they haven't protected against. So
it is technological and it is coded. It is an arms race for defense and offense forever and always.
And that's the thing, is that we cannot afford to not develop this technology. This technology is too good. It's too important. There's too many people. Now, here's the thing, though. It might be that we we develop a form of something that does something really similar to neural lace that we can put outside of people's skulls, right? A network of sensors that lets us detect enough of their brain in order to see what's going on, and then a very specific safeguarded way of pulsing it back in, which there's lots of ways of doing that with just multiple levels of safeguarding. But the point is that it's so 20 years down the road, and we're never going to get 20 years down the road unless we keep doing it now. So in this case, both extremes are wrong. The people that are like, I'm going to put this in my like favorite pet, I'm like, it's not there yet. Forget humans. You should not risk this technology on your favorite pet. They're using it on lab animals because they need something that no one's going to be upset if it dies. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to keep figuring this out, but we need to understand that we shouldn't be putting this stuff in stuff that we care about yet. And so, and again, we have to keep doing it because there's so many applications. And again, I say doing what? Trying to interface with the human brain, because what are people already doing with really similar systems that they're using to interface with the brain with scanners of various sorts? People who've lost limbs. I'm not sure if you saw, there's this girl that like she has a hand that she controls the hand with her brain.
And detach her hand from the arm and it walks around Ding style.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is, the fact that that's technology we already have. My understanding is that's minimally invasive as far as how she's controlling it. It's basically scanners as opposed to like an actual interface. So my point there is just, that technology level of so many different types of automation is right around the corner. With or without a tariff war, we were going to start needing to do that. And what people don't seem to understand is that artificially low labor prices was pushing off the rate of our automation domestically, because the more that domestic labor costs, then the sooner it makes sense to automate. As far as the trade-offs go. And so really, like the people that were raising the minimum wages everywhere, they were helping to bring automation sooner. But when they were letting in a bunch of immigrants, legal or otherwise, they were pushing down the wages, which was pushing off later automation. So, right.
And it was a double-edged sword. You keep your wages low. You're increasing tax burden of those who are making wages because the welfare burden is going up because of the lower or the higher unemployment rates of your domestic class. And
that's
sitting down and getting people to encapsulate that in full perspective context has been well nigh impossible.
You can't change one thing. You change one thing, it changes all the other things that have to balance to in response. That this one thing, you change it, that makes this go up. This going up makes this go down. This going down makes this go up. This thing below this will make this go up, but above this, it'll make it go down. And that's the thing, is because of those phase changes, where 3 or 4 levels of interaction that loop back to the original interaction. That happens all the time in the business world, where you have these supply chains that are pretty long. You can absolutely have a situation where you can put someone out of business for reasons that are not any fault of the people on this side. It's the people on that side of the supply chain. All of a sudden, these people go out of business. You just start losing from the back end of the supply chain. I can't get the parts. I can't get the parts. I can't get the parts, all the way up the supply chain. And, initially it's only for one item. But the thing is, a lot of these places, especially the smaller ones, all of their items are coming, the supplies are coming from the same supplier. They're being sold to the same downstream. And the thing is, it's existential, because not only can most businesses not afford to just not operate for a few months, they definitely cannot just expect to be able to jump back in as the preferred supplier for someone who had to find someone else for 3 months.
Yep.
You know, so
Yep.
so I don't want to downplay the people that did not prepare for these tariffs. They took their gamble, and I'm sure a lot of them paid the price for that gamble. And I don't think that it helps anyone to deny that, but I also don't think it helps anyone to deny that they had so much warning that if Trump was able to, and again over time increasing evidence that he would be able to do this, and then what do you know? So what's the big thing? The big thing is that I want to say it was 90 days is what he gave for everybody to figure out their deals. So really, we're in limbo for a full quarter of the year, for the full second quarter of the year, and that's very much on purpose. And I have some otherwise pretty intelligent friends on Facebook that are of the opinion that he's doing it just to like enrich himself on the arbitrage or something. Like he's causing chaos to make the market go up and down. Why can't he just do it with a meme coin instead of our whole market? Like, how can someone as bright as you, because he's a bright guy, how can someone as bright as you not understand what's going on here, which has nothing to do with what you're talking about? You know, that's the thing, is like he was looking at the side of like, oh, look at these market indicators. I'm like, bro, those are symptoms. Those are not the causes. Mm-hmm. So
well, I saw you know who Mike Rowe is, and you know who Theo Von is.
Dirty Jobs guy.
Yep, Dirty Jobs guy. Theo Von brought Mike Rowe onto his show to talk about the economy and all, the tariffs, similar sort of conversation. And Mike Rowe was taking the position, he wasn't a huge fan of the tariffs. He understood the purpose, or accepted the purpose of bringing jobs back. And he was speaking towards, currently we have 500,000 jobs in industry that are unfilled, and we're wanting to create 3 or 4 million more. We don't have a population that wants to do that. And Theo,
I definitely have counters to that. Yeah.
Well, Theo came up and said, as you said earlier, are the people for the economy or the economy for the people? Theo's position was, it is more important to reinstill a personal pride of a working population of contributing to their nation than having a quote unquote good economy. And I've said for years that our adherence to the idea of, or the philosophy of the bottom line is the most important thing, has disproportionately destroyed our lower middle class and our working class in order to uplift the upper middle and, so-called 1%. And it hasn't netted us a whole lot of benefit. It's given us a whole lot of headache and heartache. And we're to the point where people are starting to recognize there is a utility and a sense of honor of being the people, not a cog, if you will, but being the people who make things run. Mm-hmm. We're seeing VOTEC come back in schools. We're seeing young men go, I don't need your college degree. I'm going to be the guy that's going to have more money than a doctor 15 years out of school with zero debt, and be able to pass a trade or a business or what have you to my son, because I'm working, I'm contributing, I'm building. And I'm hopeful that we'll see that take root fiercely, because whether automation comes on the manufacturing side or not, we need to have people being proud of and taking on the same kind of roles our grandparents did in building the America we look around and see today.
Right. No, here's my thing. Like, as a consumer, as a customer, right, I want to send my resources the direction of what I want to be there to exist goods and services for me in the future. So sometimes my purchasing decisions, when I'm on the fence about where and what to purchase, I will purposely purchase something I like from somewhere that I like being there, knowing that increases the chance of it being there in the future when I want to buy it. Because, through a lot of things, my experience has been, if I like something once in a blue moon, then, I'll really enjoy it like 3 times and then it's gone. So,
I mean, just my personal parallel to that, the video game industry has been dead to me for years. For years. The last half decade, about the only thing I've played has been the Total War series, because I like massive, complicated strategy, economy and military planning.
yeah.
And I think that's about it until Helldivers 2 came out. Little indie developer from Norway who decided that they were going, or Sweden, one of the two, some Viking land, said, we're going to make a game where guys can come together, kill, do, and AA Studio and all the AAA studios are collapsing because they quit catering to the consumer, and the consumers finally had enough and are going, I'm going to buy this smaller game, this smaller studio. So if the gamers can finally wake up and do that, I think it's just going to finally spread out slowly. I mean, it all started with Gamergate, and enough of us finally woke up and went, you know what? If you really hate us that much, then go find enough women and children to buy your games. But we're the ones making money, so good luck.
Well, and that's the thing that, like, to temper the people like Rudyard Lynch from What If Alt Hiss that, or Tim Pool or whoever, that are very convinced that we're going to have a hot war, civil war at some point. The thing
I'm not convinced
that
of that
has
anymore.
convinced me since the beginning of the year that that's not going to happen is just the fact that married women and all men are essentially aligned on the issues that are the difference right now between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. And that matters right now because there's plenty of things to be very not happy about the Republican Party with. But when it's an issue of, do I want low quality garbage or do I want literal poison? That's what they're facing right now. So for us to move forward, we're going to have to replace the Democrat Party. We can't do that yet. It's not feasible yet. And so, I mean, that means all these people are stuck on the one side. So again, it means it's probably going to take a couple of elections to fix this, and it's going to and it's going to be, we're going to have to deal with external enemies while we're trying to sort ourselves out. Right? There's a lot on America's plate for the next 4 years here, but it's got to be handled. We're going to deal with a lot of external stuff because again, America First didn't mean isolationist. It meant we're actually going to pursue our own interests on the world stage, which is very different. And the thing is, again, it will be imposing a level of nationalism on people that want to join the world order, because we're like, no, listen, until you can say out loud that your country belongs to its citizens and not like some club of oligarchs that may or may not be called communists, then we're going to have less to talk about. Right? And the thing is, I mean, that applies just as much for Europe as it does for China, right? That applies just as much for Russia, and the thing is, like, and we only have so much time in one episode, but I gotta say, I'm very excited to see what happens in the Middle East coming up here, because we, for the first time, have, I've been convinced for a long time that Netanyahu had purposely set himself up to have to fight people who are worse than him, which makes him a really bad guy that he would do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, at some point or another, it's like, no, I'm not saying that he's innocent. The opposite. I'm saying he set up a terrible threat that unless they grabbed him to fix it, it was absolute mobster protection racket behavior that he engaged in. And that meant that, we had to let him handle the savages. But once they were handled, and right now they're relatively handled, right? we need something to make sure they don't come back. And that's not what he wants, because the moment that the fighting dies down, he's going to prison for the rest of his life. And he knows it. And we're having to be really careful about what that means. And I'm almost sure that when Trump stopped talking to him, it was because of the Pam Bondi leaks, if you remember. And so Bibi was like, you have to get out in front of this. And Trump's like, what do you mean I have to? I have to? No thanks, clown. Don't call me. Click. Right? I seriously, I think that's what happened.
Well, if you know anything about anything in terms of Israel, you know Mossad, you know Epstein and Mossad.
I mean, I know the history and the connections there, right? Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Most people don't. And one thing I've learned about Trump over the years is he while brilliant guy, does his stuff, knows how to, talk to people, do, foretee chess. He's had some major blind spots on a lot of things, in my opinion.
Still does.
And he still does. But he's starting to learn real fast about things.
He's learned from pain very effectively, and so many of his blind spots have gotten him knives in the back.
Exactly. And I feel he wanted Pete Hegseth there. And then to find out that Mossad was behind some of those leaks to try and push his guy out, I feel like that's what was one of the main things where he said, no, you're fucking with me. You're fucking with my team. You're fucking with me. Get fucked.
Right. So, and that's what I'm saying, is that there's going to be, and that's the thing, is that we probably can arm twist Iran, not just into accepting a temporary peace deal, but also reform of their government in response to some sort of an economic deal. And to the extent that the Ayatollahs reject that, their days are numbered, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's what tipped the dominoes away from what Bibi wanted to happen in Gaza, was Trump saying, hey, why don't we just bribe these people to behave? They're so expensive to babysit when they're not behaving. How about we just pay them to behave? And the ones that don't behave, shoot those guys. Yeah. Right? Like that's the sane approach to keeping the peace in an area, is as soon as the ones pop up that don't follow the rules, it has to be someone's job to remove them, however that works, to where it's the price of staying free and in public is to not go around being a rule breaker, right? It's pathetically basic stuff that the response from the social justice crowd had been like, no, man, it's a culture clash. You're a racist. Okay. Like, there's something special about the residents of Gaza that you swear up and down are just like you and me. And there's a bunch of Christians and stuff that live in Gaza. Anyways, these people would theoretically, if all their actual concern was that they needed what it took to survive, they would be very happy to take that deal. And the thing is that despite the efforts by money funneled through the United Nations, for instance, I mean, the money you funneled in through the United Nations was teaching 3-year-olds in Gaza to hate and want to end the lives of their neighbors' children, And I think neighbor in the next place over sense, not the next door sense, because you can't live around those people, because that's the whole point, man. Until all of them are gone, we can't be safe, and they're so bad that they can't exist. That's what they're teaching these 3-year-olds with United Nations money that was United States money funneled through the United Nations. And
we're really good at helping situations with our money.
When I'm like, we need to stop helping Israel's enemies, and then Israel can do this without our help. That's really true at this point. Israel can handle its own business as long as we are not, who's the main problem in the Middle East right now? Iran. Why does Iran have money? Because Obama gave it to them. Right? I mean, straight up. Now you can say, oh, well, it was really Iranian money that should not have been seized because, okay, but they didn't have access to it. And when Obama granted them access to it, what did they use it to do? They used it to arm Hezbollah in Lebanon to attack Israel. And of course, who benefited from that? People like Bibi Netanyahu, who had to step in and to turn everything that Obama had sent Iran into little pieces of scrap metal in Lebanon, right? Yeah. So that's my point, is that the people who think that we can just, oh yeah, Israel bad, we'll just oppose Israel. No. Israel is full, for the most part, of actually really good people, including like the Arabs, because the fact of the matter is, if you're an Arab who's willing to live and share a society with the Jew, you're already head and shoulders above most other Arabs at getting along with Jews, right? That's by the numbers. And so it makes sense that like the people that weren't down with that would go somewhere else. But then there's another sorting mechanism there, which is that if you really wanted to go somewhere else, you could. But if you cared enough to hang around right next door to the people that you really, really hate for the purpose of getting blood on their hands so that other people will get them for you, then you're a Palestinian. Right? That's what it comes down to, is that instead of trying to go somewhere and build yourself a new life, instead of getting along with the Israelis, you chose to, and the thing is, at some point or another, it wasn't you, it was your family. You were born into this crap. You were brainwashed from a 3-year-old. Well, what does that mean, though? It meant you're born of someone that was like this, and that, like it's fair to say that this person never had the chance to do the right thing, but say that again out loud. If this person never had a chance to understand what the right thing was in order to behave properly towards their fellow human, are they safe to insist that people have to allow them into their living space? No, they're not. You just said so yourself. If they're not capable of conducting themselves, and you can blame nature or nurture, but the person in front of you, forget stereotyping, the person in front of you, is this someone that you trust for 48 hours unobserved with your favorite pet? If the answer is no, they don't need to be on our side of the border. And the thing is that thinking otherwise throughout all of history would make you an extreme left-winger, to the point of being considered like an anarchist and an enemy of the state, right? And the thing about that people don't, here's the thing. The deeper you look into the harms of the state, the more you realize the best way to prevent them is to have a placeholder state that has rules about what it's not supposed to do and some way of resetting it when they don't follow the rules. Like it's whatever highfalutin technology you want to add on to that, that's the shape of the solution that's the most stable. And that if you don't have a reset button, you have some problems. But also, if the reset button is too easy to hit, then anyone and everyone is going to be hitting that, right?
Right.
So you need to actually have rational humans with a judgment of, hey, is this like, what's the balance of the harms versus the benefits of this, and how are they distributed amongst people? Do we need to pay anybody off for their troubles because of how it's turning out in order to keep this stable? At some point or another, you do have to get creative, but that's the whole point, is that at the end of the day, people get confused between like the rules and what they call like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, right? Like you say,
Right.
the rules, well, what are the spirit of the rules? What's the intention? What's the telos of the rules, right? And it's more important that you're faithful to the telos if what you care about is the outcome. But it is more important that you stick to the letter of the law if your target is compliance. So every time that we direct people's behavior away from maximizing the outcome that they're seeking towards compliance, we're forcing an inefficiency. We are forcing them to waste part of their resources, including their valuable life minutes, in order to jump through a hoop performatively that isn't even material to the outcome that the law was seeking.
Well, that also depends on the context of where your population is at. So say we get to a reset point because things just got so convoluted because of bad actors in high places,
right,
to where the law gets so dilute, you've got to retrain people, the herd, if you will, to adhere to the letter of the law until the understanding of the intent is internalized. And it's
which
I feel
requires
like we're
what?
almost there.
Requires
A monopoly
simplifying
of
the law.
force.
Simplifying
Yeah.
the law, because
Right.
when the law is too complex and there's too many details, how you can't, like, you cannot, like, even you know, I have my class E license, okay? I had to answer some 32 question quiz thingy, and I had to get at least an 80% on it to get that. Okay, number one, 80%. So again, I was allowed to not know certain aspects of the stuff being on the test. Number two, you know, was I actually going to remember every little thing? Like, most people don't. Most people have some amount of learning for the test and then forgetting it because their brain knows that they're never going to need it again, right? So that's a very small subset of the actual set of law about all this stuff. And like, there's jobs that I would not want to take on because I would be so concerned that with my level of rote memorization isn't my thing. So if I have like a 72 different sub laws that I have to be in compliance with, I'm never going to memorize those. And to the extent that they make systemic sense, I'll follow them, no problem. But to the extent that they're arbitrary, that ain't going to stick in my brain, right? So that also loops us back to, in the talk about trying to import these factory jobs and stuff, even the factory jobs that we have here that they're having trouble filling. What are the main challenges to filling them? Number one, a lot of these places have protectionist policies about how long the shifts are, how many shifts a week, some places don't have any sort of shift differential to pay people more for the hours that are less desirable. A lot of the time, they're essentially trying to give fewer raises than the general cost of living for a lot of these factories that have been here longer. However, what happened when they started sending the illegals home and getting them to self-deport and stuff? Oh, what do you know? The wages started going up at some of these big food factories, but still, like, when I did actually try to get on at one of them, what I ran into was they basically were not interested with you doing anything other than some hellish shift as like your openers. And when I say some hellish shift, I mean, it was like, I want to say it was 4 on, 4 off, 12-hour shifts from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. was the only
overnights. Yeah.
that they wanted to offer me. Well, and again, 48 hours overnights too. And it's just like, there's multiple things that don't work for me about that. But the thing is, it's like, I could have almost dealt with the first half of that shift, It's just like I could have dealt with the 6 6 p.m. to midnight part of that, right? Like, or even in a pinch, maybe the midnight to 6, not my preference, but like both of them is too much in terms of I have
And not
other
overnight pay.
obligations in my life, right? And that's the point, is that they're targeting to get people that don't have other obligations in their life in order to get them at a discount, right? You know, in the same thing that people have joked about, well, if you pay women less, then that means you can get them at a discount then, right? If everybody else is paying women less, if you're hiring the women, you'll get better women for the same money. And that's what some places choose on for certain roles to do, right? And the thing is, it's hardly ever because they're bigots. It's because they look at who they look at the so for instance, when you start looking at who you can get in the male department for a certain number of dollars per hour and who you can get in the female department at that same number of dollars per hour, on average, you're going to find a gap that looks like average differences between men and women. He can probably lift more. She probably is on average more likely to have like the gift of gab or something like that, right? That or some other thing that she would be more drawn to learning compared to what he would be drawn to learning. So you have these just observing people. The odds are, if you choose two random whatever, but you don't choose two random whatever, you look for someone that wants the job. So when you you might find, hey, out of the women that want the job and the men that want the job, these women are more impressive. I'll take two of these and none of these. It's not because I have a problem with men. It's because the two best candidates for the job that applied at the price I wanted to pay were women.
Right.
And so people don't trust the market in that sense. So I get frustrated on both ends. I get frustrated when people want to deny the market distortions caused by policy. But also, I get annoyed when people want to deny that the market can adjust. Because no, absolutely, in the way that the market adjusts, almost, not always, but almost always, is when people are unfairly discriminated against to reward the people that cater to their needs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the invisible hand of the market will sneak into where it goes and where it wants, and it's very, very malleable.
But I think you said you were looking to wrap it up around this time.
Yeah, it's about that time. I got to start winding down, get ready for work tomorrow, and take care of the wife. So
awesome. No, I honestly, like I said, I wanted to make sure that we had a human conversation about things that matter, and I think that we achieved that. So I appreciate taking your time to drop by and have a chat.
Man, it was fun. It's been too long since I've sat down and had a good combo like this. So I thank you and I appreciate it.
Alrighty. Thanks, guys. And thanks anyone who's still listening. And you have a great evening. Take care.
Good night.